We're diving back into the loss to USC. What went wrong? What needs to change? And the coaching decisions that decided this one. Plus, after watching it a second time, the roadmap for Iowa the rest of the way to salvage this season.
You are Locked On Hawkeyes, your daily podcast on the Iowa Hawkeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Trent Condon, and this is the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Glad to have you aboard with us. I've been covering the Hawkeyes for over 20 years on the radio. You can hear me currently on the Iowa Sports Radio Network with stations across the state, including Des Moines, Sioux City, Iowa City, Cedar Rapids, and the Quad Cities. Today's episode of Locked On Hawkeyes is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast, and thanks for joining us here today. And to our everydayers out there, we are going to break down what went wrong against USC a second time through the rewatch, as we do each and every week. A look back at what happened against USC and some of the big plays that decided this one. We also grade the Hawkeyes, the grades from Pro Football Focus, a look at how Iowa graded out in this one, maybe who should see a little bit more playing time here in the final couple of games of the regular season. We'll look ahead to the matchup against Michigan State in our first peek against the Spartans, and a big week in basketball around the bend. Iowa with 2 games on the men's side. A look at the women as we get ready to start to turn our attention a little bit more to basketball. But as always, football is at the forefront of things. Let's kick things off here as we go through and look at some of the decisions after watching this game a second time. The frustration definitely was there again. And when you know the outcome, and when I go through this exercise every single week, yes, you know what's going to happen. You know the way it's going to play out. You know Cade Weegen's going to be incredibly close on that 4th down catch to getting his toe inbounds, and with it, potentially changing the complexion of this one and changing the conversation for Iowa football. The winless streak against ranked teams continues now, 13 consecutive losses against ranked opponents, and how frustrating it's been in 3 of those games. Well, really all 4 games this year, as Iowa State was ranked at the time. How close that they have been of getting over the hump. And as I go through this, what I like to do is start to think again about what could have been different, what could have been done to change it. One of the first things that came up, and apologies, don't remember everything that we talked about in the Rapid Reaction podcast after the game went final. However, one thing that definitely jumped out in this one is late in the first half, Iowa, after they kick a field goal to make it 21-10, and you get the ball, you're at your 27, but you get 10 yards on first down, and you get 10 more on a run, and they run it again, and it's the end of the half. Now, I don't know if what happened against Penn State at the end of the first half, if that's something that is lingering in the mind of Kirk Ferentz. Now, of course, against Oregon, he tried a 58-yarder that Drew Stevens knocked in, but in a game where you know you need points, in a game that comes down to a very close game once again, to sit on the ball, to not take a shot. You had a holding call on that Gronowski run, and that's why they ran out the clock. But why are you running it there? Those are the end of half situations, and end of game situations that Kirk clock management, he just struggles with mightily. You know, Kirk Ferentz, for all his great qualities, clock management is rarely going to be something that we're talked about. Hell, one of their biggest, most memorable victories in program history was the walk-off in the Capital One Bowl against LSU when they beat Saban as he was on his way out the door to the Miami Dolphins. And when that happened, remember, the clock stopped starting. You remember the play call from Dolph, and you find out, and nobody knows that. Gary Dolphin said that. Clock management, not good, and not good again in this one where you needed points. You go through also the second half and the way that they played. And until that final drive, which was incredible, it was a great final drive. You go through the game long, and you just look at and rewatching this game again, how they went through this and the plays that they ran. Get the ball for the first time after USC comes down and scores coming out of the half. 4-yard run, 14-yard pass, 1st and 10. Run, 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 punt. 5 plays. 4 of them runs. What did Iowa do in the first half? They had them on their heels. You had them backed up. Second time, you get the ball. Second time in the third quarter. Run, incomplete, run, interception. Now, that was, of course, the Face mask penalty that wasn't called. That was the run on 2nd and 10, a 6-yarder by Kamari Moulton. Would have moved the ball to the USC 40-yard line. Wasn't called. Deflected ball. Pops off of Gill's knee on a bad throw by Gronowski. And we know what happens. INT. And changed it completely. They get the ball back. Run, 3-yard pass, incomplete pass on a deflection. And then the final drive was good. And how close it was. Now, I got this picture sent to me. If you're watching this on YouTube, and a big thank you, make sure you hit subscribe. You can see this one. If you're listening, this is not very good for you on the audio side, so we'll move past it quickly. But you see this, and there is a camera. There's a picture here that shows Caden Weechen's toe actually in on that catch. I thought the review was very quick. You didn't get a whole lot of angles. It was boom, boom, move on. Didn't get it in because that first blush and from that angle, the first angle that they showed, it looked like Caden Weechen's foot was clearly out of bounds. Now, here's the other thing. When I first saw that image, you don't know, was that AI? Or where did it come from? Was this somebody just taking a picture on their TV? Was it something on a command center? I don't know. Just thought it was interesting. At the very least, not going to matter. They're not going to go back and change that, nor should they. I really, truly believe, even with that still picture, you don't know how much of his foot was down at that time. He was out of bounds. That aside. That was a good throw by Gronowski. I mean, he put it where he had to. Remember, Weechen was also escorted out of bounds by the defensive back on that play. And the D-back on that play did what he was supposed to do. And in the old days, you were not able to do that as a defensive back or as a defender in general. You could not shove them out of bounds. That is the case now. Made the right play. The throw was there. Weechen was there. And just couldn't get that toe down. And alas, here we are. The late game situation was odd too. We get a personal foul for being on the field, apparently, on one of the Iowa assistant coaches. Not much explanation about that. I was trying to see something the second time through to see if there was anything that jumped off. Nothing. Okay. Got a bid whistle. Okay. Didn't matter. Iowa had opportunities, and they didn't take advantage. Iowa had chances, and they didn't do it. And again, we go back and going through this, and we'll look at the numbers from PFF. But Mark Gronowski leaving plays on the field. We talked about that short arm throw that he had on the crossing route. He also had Reese Vandersee wide open coming up the post. I mean, he had 2 steps on the defender, lays it out there. That could have been an easy score. And the makeable misses that Mark Gronowski has in the passing game, they show up. Gronowski's been fun to watch. The running ability that he has opened things up. He's been a better runner, I think, than anybody could have anticipated. But there are shortcomings him as a passer. And that could be the very little difference that we're looking for here with this guy. It's just if you had a better passer at the quarterback position, what could be, and maybe what still can be unleashed with this Iowa offense going forward with a more competent guy throwing the football. That's the hope, right? And I think that's why you're going to see Jeremy Hecklinski with the inside track to be the guy next season. Gunslinger, little, but a guy that can chuck it around, can make the throws, but is probably a more accurate passer. And that's a hope that what he's going to turn into, going to need some experience. Still going to be an incredibly young guy if he is the guy next season, coupled with a guy that can move around, a guy that has more wiggle to him than a Hank Brown. And that's why I think what Tim Lester is looking for at the quarterback position, that's what they hope that they're going to be able to get next season. But before that, we got 2 more games. It's Michigan State. It's a road trip to Nebraska to wrap things up on Black Friday. They will wrap up the regular season. Iowa sits at 6-4. And boy, 8-4 feels a whole lot different. It'll still been woulda, shoulda, coulda with this football team. And that's how it's going to be remembered this year. But if they limp in, they beat a bad Michigan State team this week, lose to Nebraska for what, just the second time in a dozen years, it's going to feel pretty hollow. You win these final 2 games, get some positive momentum, get some good feelings going into the offseason, definitely will change it. That's what's still in front of this Iowa football team. One look back at the numbers, the grades from Pro Football Focus. We grade the Hawkeyes. When we come back, how bad was it? The offensive line, some eye-opening numbers, and of course, we got to see some new guys out there on that offensive line with the injuries. We'll tackle that next as we continue Locked On Hawkeyes. Well, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. Not just the NBA, though, they got you covered, including college basketball, of course, college football here. Iowa, a 16.5-point favorite, big number against the Spartans coming up this weekend. They got you covered there. Iowa against Southeast Missouri State. That line will be up for you on Tuesday as you get ready for some basketball action, all on the FanDuel app. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Trent Condon back with you once again here on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day as we continue and go through everything that's going on in the world of the Hawkeyes. Some football, some basketball talk. We've got to talk a little wrestling too. That's coming up for you on tomorrow's show. Thanks for being with us and making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day on the Locked On Network, now number one for sports podcasts. As we continue, let's take a look at the numbers from Pro Football Focus and how Iowa graded out in this one. Let's start over on the offensive side of the football and start with Mark Gronowski, the quarterback. He grades out with a 60.6, had that one in the fourth quarter, the big one. I put Iowa down to about the 30-yard line before they are eventually stopped. The three run plays, before they threw the ball on 4th down and 6. Didn't get it on the Weegan play that we talked about. Kamari Moulton, very good. Once again, a 73.6 grade for Moulton. He continues to show up in a big way. Have a feeling maybe this week is the one where he's going to finally be able to get over 100 yards rushing, as he had 90 yards rushing against USC, averaging 6 yards per carry. Jazion Patterson, like to see him get a little bit more run in this game. We talked about that leading into it in the preview. Every day, as you know, I was wondering if we're going to see a little bit more rotation, a little bit more out of these backs, and we did get to see Jazion Patterson. And yet, even when that's happening, I saw plenty of people say, just run Patterson all the time. I get that too. Let's go over to the guys catching the football or blocking a lot of times too. Hayden Large, he grades out as your top guy, and it's because of his run blocking. A 72.9 for Hayden Large. DJ Voname, another big performance out of him. Dude's going to be good and he's got work to do as a run blocker, but in the passing game, you see this redshirt freshman from Carroll Kemper. He is really playing at a high level. Nice grade for Reese Vanderzee. Of course, not just what he did in the run game as a blocker, but also what he did to throw that touchdown. How about that? Caden Weegan grades out with a 65 grade. 64 for Jacob Gill. Had the first big catch of the game in the first drive of the game, and then was not heard from after that, outside of the ball that bounced off his knee for an interception. Dayton Howard had the touchdown. He grades out with the 60.5. How about Thomas Meyer getting in there? 3 snaps that he played in the game, and he was just a blocker in those ones. A 58.9 for him. Little play for Zach Ortworth, 51.7. And Sam Phillips, the lowest graded, with a 49.1. Then we get to the offensive line, and maybe the most interesting of this offensive line because of all the injuries early on. They lost Bo Stevens a little bit later on. They lost Cade Pieper a little bit later after that. Jennings Dunker went out. So you got a banged up offensive line. Lauk, who has been tremendous this year. Trevor Lauk, for all the questions that maybe you had coming into the season about Iowa at the left tackle position, you talk about solidifying something and something to get excited about in the future. That is definitely Trevor Lauk, and he's going to be a stalwart of this offense for the next couple of seasons. Cade Pieper up next in this one. Those are the only 2 guys, Lauk and Pieper, that graded out over a 70 run grade in run blocking in this one. Leighton Jones up next with a 65.6. He's the heir apparent to Bo Stevens at one of the guard positions next season. Logan Jones a 64. Same for Stevens. Malinsky, who came in at the other guard position, came in for Pieper. He was at a 54.7. Bad grade for Jennings Dunker, a 54.6, as he's been hobbled through a big portion of this season. And then finally, Jack Dotzler, who came in for Dunker, he grades out pretty low with a 39.1, including a 0.0 pass blocking grade. That's not good. Let's jump over to the defensive side of the football and the grades. These are, again, from Pro Football Focus. What they do is they go through every single play. They watch all 11 players. They got all the all 22 film, and they break things down that way. On the defensive line, your top ranked guy was Brian Allen. He grades out with a 78.9 grade. Continue to say, everydayers, yes, this is a Brian Allen podcast. Want to see more of him out there. Love what he can do off the edge. Very good for Max Llewellyn as well as 76. Good also for Aaron Graves, who had a sack in the game, 75.8 out of him. Herkett with the 73. These are all very good. Remember, 60 is average. Kenneth Merriweather above that, a 63.6. Jonah Pace, 62, played quite a bit. Hawthorne with the 58, and then Pittman with the 46 in his limited snaps in the game. We got to see the return of Jaden Harrell. He is the third-ranked linebacker. Jaden Montgomery led the way, though, with a 75.3. Really good number from him, and a good tackling grade also. That was the difference between him and Carson Shire, who was the lowest graded linebacker with a 59.6, just a 37.5 tackle grade for Carson Shire in this one. Finally, at defensive back, your top guy was Cohen Entringer, 66.1 for Cohen. Zach Lutmer with a 64, 61 for Deshaun Lee, a 60, right at average for Xavier Wampa. TJ Hall, a 58.6, and Jalen Watson, who had to come in for Hall because of an injury, he grades out with a 47. All those guys, look, they're playing dudes. That USC wide receiver group was really, really talented, and he definitely saw that throughout the course of that one. One thing, like to see those guys maybe try to find the ball a little bit more. In terms of snaps in the game, running back, 29 for Moulton, 14 for Patterson, 11 for Xavier Williams, and 1 for Terrell Washington Jr. That, oh boy. Would like to see Kamari Moulton a little bit more than half of the running back snaps. What you had about that. Yeah, he was at 29 and you had outside of that 26 snaps. So maybe like to see that number a little bit better. Did like to see Patterson out there though. At the wide receiver spot, it was Reese Vanderzee and Dayton Howard. Those were your top guys in terms of snaps. Just 20 snaps for Sam Phillips, 20 also for Weechen, and Jacob Gill with 29 in the game. Vanami, he led the way at the tight end position with 42 snaps, 21 out of large. Ortworth at 19, and we mentioned Meyer in there for 3. The offensive line, because of the injuries, Malinsky played 14, 11 for Doetzler. Stevens left early. That means Leighton Jones played 38 snaps. And then over on the defensive side of the football, leading the way, at the defensive line position in terms of snaps as they went 8 deep in this one. Aaron Graves, he had 63 snaps. Defensive ends, the seniors, Ethan Herkett and Llewellyn, both with 47. Jonah Pace, he led the way of the second defensive tackle with 40 snaps. Hawthorne had 22. Brian Allen, there's with 26 for Allen. Like to see that number even tick up a little bit higher. 21 for Merriweather, and then 8 for Pittman. We talked about linebacker, the return of Jaden Harrell. He played 16 snaps in the game. Shire went the distance with 68, 52 for Montgomery, and Roxroth for 3. He played 17 snaps in that one. And finally, at defensive back, leading the way, Lutmer, 68, then 67 each for Entringer and for Wampa. Hall, after that injury, he plays 54. A lot of snaps also for Deshaun Lee. He had 51. And there's Watson coming in with that injury. He played 13 snaps in the game. One final snapshot of what we saw against USC. A lot of different things to break down. So up next, it's Michigan State. The Spartans beat the Hawkeyes a year ago. Is it going to happen again? We'll talk about that next. We continue Locked On Hawkeyes. College football is back, and couldn't be more excited as we come down the home stretch. The tailgates, the final one that you'll get at Kinnick Stadium this season. The rivalries, energy in the stands, there's nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, and prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. You can find great deals right now at Kinnick Stadium for Senior Day against Michigan State. A celebration, of all those seniors, and you can give them a big round of applause and then cheer them on to victory against Michigan State. Great deals right now on the Gametime app, and the app, it's super simple. I can even see exactly where I'm going to be sitting from my seat before buying, and I love absolutely no more surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Trent Condon back with you one final time on the Locked On Hawkeyes podcast. We are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. If you're listening on the podcast side, need more of these 5-star reviews over there. All that helps us get in front of more Hawkeye fans. Wrapping things up, Michigan State this week. This is a dreadful Michigan State team, certainly than what we're used to historically. Jonathan Smith, their head coach, he might be out the door. They've gone through a couple of different quarterbacks. Aiden Childs, who absolutely torched Iowa a year ago. He's been banged up throughout the course of the season. Sounds like maybe he's going to be coming back this week for Sparty. The backup quarterback did a really good job a couple of weeks ago against Minnesota, threw for over 300 yards in that game. Struggled, though, last week against Minnesota. I think the biggest concern of this game, you go back to a season ago, which was just such a weird game. Remember when Iowa went out there playing on grass? Yes, that's been a problem. Iowa playing on grass is Iowa's inability to tackle in that football game. It was just absolutely wild. Nick Marsh is a stud. He's one of the best wide receivers you're going to find, and we just saw great wide receivers last week. Nick Marsh is a really talented guy. Can he find somebody that can get him the ball? That'll be the question. Aiden Childs, if he plays, he's hot or cold. And if he's hot, he's excellent. If he's cold, he's brutal. There's not a whole lot of middle ground with him at the quarterback spot. But maybe the biggest thing is Michigan State, when you're talking about this offense up front, they allowed 20 pressures against Penn State. Their pass blocking grade, hideous at PFF. And how about this? They've allowed 35 sacks this season. Michigan State, how about this, has allowed 81 tackles for loss this year. This has to be the get-right game for that defensive line. And though they got a couple of sacks, didn't have much pressure last week against USC, didn't have a whole lot against Oregon the week previous. This needs to be the game where the defensive line comes back, comes of age. Let's get a little more Brian Allen out there. On the other side, they're giving up 31 points a game. Defense is not very good luck. There's a reason I was favored by 16.5 in this football game. We're going to have Matt Sheehan on later in the week in a crossover episode. Matt's one of my favorite people on the podcast network, and out of the Big Ten clan that we work with, he's a guy that he's fun, he's engaging, he's entertaining. I think you will enjoy that. And I don't think he's got a whole lot of optimism about Michigan State. This should be an easy one. But where is Iowa mentally now? And you wondered a week ago after that devastating loss against Oregon how Iowa was going to respond, and they responded well coming out in the first half. Back at Kinnick, there for the final time this season. What's this team going to look like, and how are they going to respond? And then we got more going on this week. We got basketball happening starting on Tuesday evening as Iowa will take on Southeast Missouri State. On Monday, Coach McCullum was singing their praises, as coaches like to do. A team that was right there against Missouri. I don't think Missouri's going to be that good this season. Certainly not the team that he beat a year ago in the NCAA tournament. Don't think they're nearly as good as that. That'll be a 7:30 tip-off tomorrow night on BTN Plus for that one. And then one more game, and kind of a quick turnaround, as they'll take on Chicago State then on Thursday. Chicago State, historically, year after year, one of the worst teams in college basketball. Before the waters get much deeper next week, starting on Tuesday against Ole Miss. Then they'll either play Utah or Grand Canyon in the second round. Win, they'll take on the winner. Lose, they'll take on the loser. But a big one against Chris Beard and Ole Miss, so we'll talk about that more as the week goes on. But some basketball on the forefront there. Also, we got the women's team. They had a big weekend as they, once again, just absolutely throttled an in-state foe. So they got the big win last week against Drake, 100-58. Then they go on the road to UNI, win it 74-41. This team's fun to watch. And, the one thing that maybe I missed coming into the season was just how good Chit Chat Wright is. Now, there's going to be some guards, some bigger guards she's going to have to defend, and there could be some issues there. She's lightning quick. She's aggressive. I love her aggressiveness that she plays with. This team, going to be entertaining. We talked about kind of that upside that I think this group has, and they have a ton of that. Layla Hayes, she's come in and played really well against limited competition. Going to be an exciting year on the hardwood for both the men's and the women's team. That'll do it for today. As always, thanks for making Locked On Hawkeyes your first listen every day. Again, we are your daily Iowa Hawkeye podcast, so hit subscribe on YouTube, or make sure you hit that subscription button on the podcast side so you know each and every day when we're available for you. Thanks for being with us on the Locked On Network, now number one for podcasts across all platforms. Thanks for being with us. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Until then, go Hawks.